There's a moment when you see yourself clearly for the first time, not the version you've constructed, not the person you've told yourself you are, the actual you. And it's almost always shocking, because the person you meet is not who you thought you were meeting. Carl Jung spent his life documenting what happens when people finally come face to face with the parts of themselves they've spent their entire lives denying. And he discovered something that changes everything once you understand it. You don't become whole by defeating your shadow. You become whole by recognizing it as yourself. The shadow isn't a monster hiding in your unconscious. It's you. It's the parts of you that don't fit the image you've built. It's the ambition you said you didn't have, the envy you said you were above, the rage you said you'd mastered, the desire you said was beneath you, the weakness you said you'd outgrown. All of it is still there. It's been there the whole time, growing stronger because you've refused to acknowledge it. Most people meet their shadow by accident. They're in a moment when the persona can't hold. Someone says something that triggers a response so disproportionate, so violent, so unexpected that they can't explain it away. A friend succeeds, and instead of celebrating, they feel a hatred that shocks them. A person they love sets a boundary, and instead of accepting it gracefully, they crumble into desperation. They act in a way that contradicts everything they believe about themselves. And in that moment, they meet someone they didn't know existed. That someone is their shadow. A woman I know prided herself on her independence. She didn't need anyone. She was self-sufficient. She'd built an entire identity around not being needy. Then she fell in love and discovered something terrifying. Underneath the independence was a desperation so profound it scared her. She wanted to text him constantly. She wanted reassurance. She wanted to know where he was and what he was thinking. She discovered that her entire persona of independence was built on top of a shadow of neediness, so intense it had no bottom. The moment she met that shadow, everything she believed about herself became questionable. This is what Jung meant by projection. You don't actually see other people clearly. You see the screen onto which you've projected your own shadow. The friend you despise for being needy, they're showing you the neediness you've disowned in yourself. The person you judge for being selfish, they're mirroring the selfishness you won't acknowledge. The colleague you resent for being ambitious, they're living out the ambition you've denied. You're not actually judging them. You're attacking the parts of yourself you see in them and refuse to accept. The moment you meet your shadow is the moment you realize how much energy you've spent fighting yourself. Because the persona requires constant maintenance. You have to keep performing. You have to keep the story coherent. You have to make sure your actions align with the image you've constructed. This takes enormous energy. It's like holding a beach ball underwater. The harder you push, the more force it builds underneath. Eventually, you can't hold it anymore. It explodes upward with violent force. And when it does, you meet your shadow. What's striking about this meeting is how personal it feels. You don't just realize you're capable of something. You realize you've been capable of it all along. The jealousy you felt wasn't new. You've been jealous for years. You just didn't allow yourself to call it that. The selfishness you discover isn't a new development. You've been selfish. You just rationalized it differently. The weakness you encounter isn't something that just appeared. You've been weak. You just hid it better. Jung called this the unconscious mind, but it's not unconscious in the way people think. It's not forgotten. It's actively suppressed. Every moment you tell yourself you're not jealous when you are, you're pushing it down. Every moment you call yourself generous when you're actually seeking recognition, you're burying it. Every moment you smile and nod when you want to scream, you're feeding the shadow. It grows in the dark because you keep it there. The meeting with the shadow changes how you see everything. You can't unsee it once you've met it. A person who's met their shadow can't go back to hating others for the same thing without recognizing themselves in that hatred. They can't pretend anymore. The persona loses its grip because they've touched what's underneath it. But here's what most people don't understand. Meeting your shadow is only the beginning. The real work is integration. It's not about defeating the shadow or controlling it. It's about accepting it as part of yourself and finding where it belongs in your life. The ambitious shadow doesn't need to be destroyed. It needs to be redirected. The needy shadow doesn't need to be denied. It needs to be acknowledged and worked with. The selfish shadow doesn't need to be repressed. It needs to be understood. This is the process Jung called individuation. It's the journey toward becoming whole by integrating all the parts you've disowned. Most people can't do this. They meet their shadow in a moment of crisis and then spend the rest of their lives either denying what they saw or being controlled by it. They oscillate between the persona and the shadow, never integrating. One day, they're performing strength. The next day, they're possessed by weakness. One day, they're pretending not to want anything. The next day, they're desperately grasping. They never become stable because they're still at war with themselves. The person who integrates their shadow becomes something different. They don't perform anymore. They don't need to, because they've stopped fighting the parts of themselves they've disowned. They can acknowledge ambition without being controlled by it. They can feel neediness without being destroyed by shame. They can act selfishly sometimes without having to construct an elaborate justification. They're not better than they were. They're just more honest. And that honesty changes how they relate to everyone else. They can no longer project their shadow onto others with the same intensity because they've met it in themselves. They can see other people more clearly because they're no longer using them as screens for their own disowned parts. They can accept people as they are instead of attacking them for what they represent. The moment you meet your shadow is the moment you have a choice. You can run from it. You can build a stronger persona and try to hide it again. Or you can stop running and let it teach you something about who you actually are. You can stop performing and start becoming. You can integrate the parts you've disowned and become whole. Most people choose to run. They're too invested in the image. They've built too much around the persona. The thought of accepting their shadow feels like accepting defeat. They don't realize that running is the defeat. Fighting yourself is the only real way to lose. The shadow you meet is not your enemy, it's yourself. And the moment you stop treating it like something to overcome and start treating it like something to understand, everything changes. You stop being divided. You stop sabotaging yourself. You stop projecting your disowned parts onto everyone around you. You become, for the first time, integrated, whole, real.